Hey all, so I'm back with part two of my fibroid story as promised. If you haven't checked out part one, I did link it. I did attach it to this video, so be sure to check it out if you haven't done so already. I want to promise that this video will not be nearly as long as the first video. The first video was 40 minutes. That wasn't the plan. I I thought I thought the video would actually be shorter, but I wound up telling you my giving you the gist of my entire journey from 19 through 40 years old. So hopefully you were willing to sit through all of that, but you can just watch it in parts as well. I'll also be posting more shorts as time goes on. But in this video, before I get started, I do want to mention two things. In my last video, I continuously mentioned that some doctors weren't pushing or weren't taking the time to give me an MRI. I said MRI a couple of times in that video, and that is actually not what I was trying to say. What I should have said was ultrasound. The MRI actually didn't come in until it was time for me to get a consultation with the UFE doctor. So I just wanted to state that what I was getting before by some doctors, the doctor in New York, she was consistently giving me an ultrasound when I went to my GYN appointments, as that was the ultrasound showed where the fibroids were located and the size and all of that good stuff. Fast forward to the last doctor I went to when I was here, the last gynecologist. Who recommended me to the UFE doctor, she also gave me an ultrasound. And that final ultrasound that I got from her actually showed that I had more than the 3 fibroids. So we'll get to that. One more thing I want to mention from my last video. I know I came off as very adamant of not wanting a hysterectomy. And I said that in my last video, but I am a passionate speaker, so I just want to make it clear I'm not trying to shame anyone who does decide or who's on the verge of getting a hysterectomy because of their fibroids. If you feel like that is the right decision for you after you've done the research, please go forward with that. I just wanted to share my story and just state that that's something that wasn't for me. And then let's keep in mind, there are many of us who don't have the same experience with fibroids. And there are some of us who, for instance, I have the pregnant belly came along for me just within the past couple of years, but it's not something I always had to deal with, or not something that was super noticeable, because I always had what I always call like a little pooch at the bottom here. But in my slimmer days, when I was at the weight that I mentioned in my last video, like around 134, around that weight class, you couldn't, like, my stomach was flat. You couldn't really tell that I had any pooch at the bottom. But as I gained weight, as I got older, and I mentioned that I prefer to be at 145, but when I gained that little bit of weight, my stomach started to protrude a little bit. And it was because my uterus started to expand because my fibroids were growing. So I just want to mention that. And my fibroids grew to the point where it looked like I was 4 months pregnant. But there are many women out here who look like they're like 9 months pregnant because their fibroids are that large to the point where they can't even, um, the other minimal surgeries are no longer an option. So I just wanted to mention that no shaming getting a hysterectomy if that is your choice. And if that is your only choice, I just wanted to state that it wasn't something that was necessary for me. And it wasn't something that it just wasn't necessary for me, but it was just something that continuously was recommended after I had done my own research. And I said, okay, there are other options out there for me. So I just wanted to mention that before I just jumped into the UFE part of my journey. Okay, so now let's talk about my UFE journey. So as mentioned, the final doctor that I went to, who will actually be my gynecologist moving forward, even though she'll be my gynecologist moving forward. We'll just leave it there. Um, but yeah, so I had an ultrasound at this office before, let me think. She had given me the card for the UFE doctor, and before I went to see the UFE doctor, I got another ultrasound from this particular gynecologist so she could send those records over to the UFE doctors to see where I stand with my fibroids. And come to find out, so like I said in my first video, I had 3 fibroids that I had lived with for 2 decades, right? When she did my ultrasound, it turns out that I had 5 fibroids listed. And they ranged from the biggest one I think was 13, and then the smallest was like 3. So they range, and she said it could have been a thing where more developed as I got older, or the ones that I already had broke apart. Whatever the case is, I had more than I knew about, which actually broke my heart in the end, because I'm thinking I'm still walking around with the 3 fibroids, but I should have known something was up, because as mentioned, my stomach was starting to protrude a little more. Like, it was noticeable, at least to me. And I was like, what is going on? Either the biggest one that's sitting on my fibroid has gotten, I'm sorry, the one fibroid, the largest one sitting on my uterus, must have gotten really large, or maybe the 2 smaller ones got really large, because I have the one that's on top of my uterus, and then I got the 2, believe it or not, on top of my ovaries. I had 2 more. Those were where the 3 were located. But yeah, so when we did the ultrasound there, it turns out I have 5. And like I said, she said it could be in a sense of either I just developed more. I'm thinking it's possible that I did develop more because of the very high stressful moments I encountered over the past few years. Or she said another option was that they could have broke apart. The ones I already had could have broke apart, and then those continued to grow. And then at that time as well, so I didn't mention I had experienced a fall about, it was a year after my mom passed. I want to say about 4 years ago, I had experienced a fall, and I had hurt my lower back. So I was experiencing sciatica, but what I thought was just the injury alone had turned out that one of those fibroids, the 5 that were found, was sitting on my back. And how I found that out wasn't through the ultrasound itself, because they can only see, actually, I'm sorry, let me just rewind. When I did the ultrasound, she had a very hard time seeing the ones that were by my ovaries. So they weren't super noticeable on the screen. But like I said, somehow with all the different pictures they took during ultrasound, they found the other ones. But I wasn't told at that time that I had a fibroid that was sitting on my back. How I found that out is when the UFE doctor asked that I get a MRI. And the MRI is actually, well, it's mandatory. It's mandatory to get an MRI so they can see the full scope of the fibroids, to see if we can move forward with surgery, see where everything's sitting, et cetera, et cetera. So got the MRI done, which is when you lay down flat on your back and you go into that big old machine. And that is where it was discovered that I had just had a multitude of fibroids, and one of them was actually sitting on the back of my spine. So again, heartbreaking, because this is something that this could have been going on for a long time, longer than I'm thinking, that it has it just could have been many, many years that I could have been carrying these multiple fibroids. But because they can only see what they can see on the ultrasound, I was always told that it was just the 3. So lo and behold, had way more than 3 fibroids. Luckily, I spoke to the UFE doctor, UFE specialist out here in Georgia, and he did state that I was a candidate for a UFE. I'm sorry, I don't know why I paused there, but he did state that I was a candidate, and I was really thankful for that. And in this particular surgery, so so there are a few different surgeries. There's liposcopy, myomectomy, hysterectomy, as you know, and UFE. And as I mentioned in my last video, the gynecologist that I went to before I went to my final gynecologist, had stated at that time that I wouldn't be the best candidate for UFE because she swore up and down that I wanted kids. I was about to say more kids. I ain't got no kids. My kid is my fur baby, but yeah, she had in her mind that I wanted kids, or she had made up her mind for me. So she said that UFE wouldn't be the best way to go. I told her that I really didn't want surgery in regards to just being cut open and my fibroids being taken out, because it wasn't a guarantee that they wouldn't come back. And even though those surgeries, the myomectomy and the liposcopy, were considered minor surgeries, still, I just didn't want to take the risk of going through those surgeries, having scars left behind. I have enough scars, having more scars left behind. And then a couple years down the line, we're back to square one. So that is why I said I had shifted to the doctor that I go to now. So fast forward, UFE doctor said I was a good candidate. His name is Dr. John Lipman. That's his name. He's a specialist out here in Georgia, very well known out here. So we had a phone call. We did the consultation. He had all the visuals and the paperwork in regards to how many fibroids I had and the size. And he went over the procedure with me over the phone. And that was that. And I had already made up my mind that it's what I wanted to do, but it was just nice that he gave me a breakdown and told me what would take place. And just, if you're unaware yourself, uterine fibroid immobilization is also what they consider a very minimal surgery. But the difference is that you get a very tiny needle either put into your groin or into your wrist area, I believe it is. For me, it was my groin area. And more than likely, because of where my fibers were particularly located and because of the size, I'm more than likely that's why it was done in my groin area. But the whole procedure is based on stopping the blood flow to the fibroids to completely kill them off. So that's where we are now. So I got the surgery, I got the procedure done on May 28th. It was a very quick procedure. It was probably I was probably on the table for maybe 30 to 45 minutes, went into recovery for a couple of hours. My husband was with me. You do have to have someone with you. My husband was with me. The procedure itself was fine. Recovery was going okay. Like towards the end. Let's see, how can I say this? The last hour or so before it was time for me to go home, after I, recouped in the recovery room, I did start to feel the cramps that they had mentioned that would occur because, again, the blood flow was being cut off to my fibroids, like completely cut off. There's no more blood going to my fibroids, so my fibroids are no longer continuing to grow. There's nothing for them to feed on, so they're slowly dying off. So now this isn't a be all ends all. I'm still in the recovery phase because the months 1 through 3 is when the fibroids start to shrink slowly. But months 3 through 12, or 3 through 6, let me say that, is when I'll start to see the most significant change in regards to my uterus shrinking, which will hopefully cause my stomach to become a little flatter. I've seen it come down a tiny bit, but not as much as I would like as of yet. But that's because, like I said, it takes the months 3 through 6. I'll start to see some progress, and then I'll see even more progress as the year goes on. What I can say, though, what's been the good thing is that, remember in part 1, I had mentioned that I had heavy flows, but I always thought that was normal. Like, it didn't seem strange to me because I've always had a menstrual cycle like that Come to find out, after I've had the UFE, I noticed my last 2 cycles, I got regular cycles after the surgery, and they're so much lighter than all my menstrual cycles since I got my period at 10 years old. So I know that that wasn't the norm for all those years. My cycle is much lighter. I barely get any cramps. I used to. What I didn't mention in my last video too was around ovulation time, not the week of my period, but a couple weeks before my period. And then, excuse me, ovulation is after the period. So after my period and a couple weeks before my period, I would get these sharp pains right where my ovaries were, because that's where I also have fibroids sitting. I'm not getting that now. I don't have the sharp pains before my period or during ovulation, which is after my period. Even right now, I'm actually on my cycle right now, and I'm not experiencing any cramps. And like I said, the periods have gotten very lighter, and I don't feel the pelvic pressure either. So those are 3 benefits: lighter period, no cramps, and no pelvic pressure. So now we're just waiting to see if the stomach starts to go down, like I mentioned. And like I said, I've seen a little bit of a difference, but I'm waiting to see hopefully more of a difference. And the doctor did guarantee me, like, the largest one, the largest fibroid I had will go down. The one on my back will go down as well. Like the tissue breaks down and everything completely dies off. Now, the 2 large ones on my ovaries, he said those are the 2 that he's most concerned about, because again, they're not going to continue to grow because the blood supply is cut off. But how they will break down and how much they will shrink, I don't know yet because of their size and their location. But I'm hoping, just like the rest, they'll just die out and shrink to nothingness. But either way, like I said, so far 3 benefits. I'm say it again: lighter period or normal period. Matter of fact, just to tell you how heavy my periods were, I was using the really long, large overnight wing. Sorry, really large overnight pads with wings, um, during the day and in the evening, because that's how heavy my periods were. Now I'm just using the regular size pads instead of the overnight or super long, with no issue, no overflow, no messiness, no nothing. So like I said, lighter flows, no cramps, no pelvic pressure right now. And the back pain has also been minimized as well. So that's 4 benefits that I've received from the uterine fibroid immobilization. So I want to just mention a little bit too about this procedure, and then I'll stop after that. And if you want to know more, if you have any questions, you can leave it in the comments. But I will say, I'm not going to say, for me at least, UFE, the recovering part of it, the recovery phase, once I got home, it wasn't the easiest the first couple of days. I'm going to be honest when I say I felt like I was being tortured the first couple of days, because I don't know if it was something my body's just not used to surgery or whatever the case may be, but I feel like my body went into shock. And they say sometimes this does happen because your whole entire body is having a reaction to the fibroids being cut off, because it's just something like the body doesn't know what's going on, because it's something that you've been carrying around for so long and it's been the norm. So now it's like in fight or flight mode. I was on the floor, like it was pain. I was going through a lot of pain for the first couple of days, and then the pain started to subside. But I was on mostly bed rest. You can't do a whole lot of walking because of the incision. You want to walk around a little bit to get your blood flow going, but like going up and down the stairs, very, very minimal. Couldn't really do that. I couldn't walk the dog like I usually do. So my husband did a lot of the housework and caretaking and walking the dog and doing all that fun stuff for the first 2 weeks. And then the third week, I was able to kind of get up and slowly, very slowly get back to it. Yeah, but for some women, they may not have the same reaction. And I also believe I had a tough time those first few days, because my even though I did get cramps, during my period. I didn't get extreme cramps like on a consistent basis like some other women would get, and I believe that's because my diet played a huge part in that. But after getting the UFE and then experiencing those extreme cramps from the blood supply being cut off, that was just, I don't know, that was just, it was a lot for me at that time. It was just something unexpected. But in the end, I will say that the surgery was worth it. It was the right choice for me. Um, and one more thing I do want to say, it's not an inexpensive procedure. Is it worth it? Yes. Is it inexpensive? Even with insurance? No. And that's the really sad part about all of this, because there are so many of us who have fibroids, who don't have the means or the funds to even proceed with these procedures. And that's just a whole nother issue in itself. But in the end, I want to say that I did make the choice that was right for me. I'm happy with it thus far. As the months go, we will see what this belly does, and I'll give you an update on that. But right now, like I said, I got quite a few benefits. I have no complaints. I would advise, if you are suffering from fibroids, as I mentioned, please do your own research. Don't just automatically flow with what the doctor says. Don't also allow them to make up your mind for you. If you know what you want, then that's what you should go toward. So I hope this part two made sense. Like I said, I want to keep it as simplistic as possible because I did not want this video to be as long as the first one. But if you do have any questions, if I left out anything, if I can explain anything further, anything that wasn't clear, or if you just want to share your journey, leave it in the comments. Don't hesitate. Don't be shy. No judgment over here. And if this video resonates, please be sure to like this video. If you want to stick around for more one-on-one talks like these, or just take a look at my healing and boundary videos. I do text overlay and I do talking heads in regards to those, but mostly text overlays for more of a chill vibe. But if you want to check those out, they're in the feed, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. And thank you so, so much for being here. And until next time, please be sure to continue to take care of yourself. Bye.